If you had told Riley McKenna a month ago that she'd be standing ankle-deep in mud on the edge of an open prairie, wind slapping her cheeks raw, she would have laughed, maybe even hung up the phone. Yet here she was, boots caked in earth, breath fogging in the early dawn, staring at a horse who looked like he'd seen the world burn and was still somehow standing. Riley's life had always been about the city, the pace, the noise, the certainty of streetlights and subway grates. After her divorce, her therapist suggested she change her environment. Riley pictured a yoga retreat, maybe a silent monastery. Instead, she'd signed up for a month at the sanctuary, a horse rescue in South Dakota. She still wasn't sure if it was penance, escape, or just some half-baked idea of reinvention. The owner, Marianne, met her at the gate. Marianne had a handshake like a lumberjack and a gaze that missed nothing. "You're early," she said, glancing at Riley's tiny duffel. "You didn't bring much." "I don't plan on staying long," Riley replied, forcing a laugh. The lie tasted bitter. Marianne led her through the compound, pointing out paddocks and barns, her words mixing with the scent of hay and distant manure. "We rescue all kinds," Marianne said. "Some were racers, some came from auctions, some were just left behind." She paused at a battered fence where a lone horse grazed, his coat a patchwork of scars and mud. "That's Thunderbolt. Mean as a snake. Don't go near him unless you want trouble." Riley looked at the animal. Thunderbolt's eyes followed her, unblinking, unreadable. Her first day was a lesson in humility. She'd always been competent, fluent in conference calls, dazzling in courtrooms. But horses didn't care about resumes. They cared about food, trust, and the thousand silent ways humans could screw up. She fumbled with halters, tripped over water buckets, and earned a solid kick in the shin from a cranky Shetland named Daisy. By noon, she'd sweated through her only clean shirt. At lunch, Riley sat on the back steps, eating a peanut butter sandwich that tasted like glue. She watched Marianne's team, rough, practical people, move with a rhythm she envied. No one questioned what came next. There was a strange comfort in their routine, a wordless understanding that things would get done because they had to. She was about to head inside when she heard shouting near the far paddock. Two volunteers were waving their arms, trying to herd a young mustang who had slipped his lead and was darting dangerously close to the fence. Instinctively, Riley jogged over, unsure what she could do, but unwilling to just watch. "Don't spook him!" one of the volunteers yelled. But the mustang was already panicked, eyes wide, muscles quivering. Riley moved slowly, remembering something she'd read. Don't stare. Keep your movements soft. She angled her body, giving the horse space, murmuring nonsense words she hoped sounded gentle. The mustang stopped, nostrils flaring, then bolted the other way. As he did, Thunderbolt, silent and sudden, stepped between the mustang and the open gate, blocking the escape with a snort and a stamp. Everyone froze. The mustang backed away, finally settling, sides heaving. The volunteers caught him quickly, whispering thanks and relief. "Thunderbolt just saved your hide," one of them muttered, glancing at Riley. Later that afternoon, Marianne found her cleaning out stalls. "You did good," she said. "Not many city folk would have tried to help. You learn fast." "I was just scared for him," Riley admitted. Marianne's mouth curled into a small smile. "Fear's not a bad teacher. Out here you listen to it, but you don't let it run the show." As the sun dipped behind the trees, painting the fields gold and violet, Riley wandered toward Thunderbolt's paddock. She stopped at the fence, watching him graze. He looked up, their eyes meeting across the distance. "I saw what you did," Riley said softly. "Thank you." Thunderbolt flicked an ear, then turned away, his tail swishing. That night, lying in a creaky cot, Riley couldn't sleep. The silence pressed in on her, heavy and unfamiliar. She thought about her old life, how she used to fall asleep to the hum of traffic, always sure of what tomorrow would bring. Here, nothing was certain. The horses didn't care about her past, her failures, or what she was running from. They cared about the present, the food, the warmth, the safety of the herd. A storm rolled in, thunder rumbling low across the plains. Riley sat up, watching flashes of lightning through the warped glass. She heard the horses in the barn, restless, snorting nervously. Instinct pulled her from bed. She grabbed her raincoat and boots, jogging across the muddy yard. Inside the barn, the horses stamped and paced. Thunderbolt stood alone in his stall, head high, watching everything. Riley moved quietly, checking the doors, whispering reassurances to the anxious animals. She stopped at Thunderbolt's stall, their eyes meeting again in the half-dark. "It's okay," she said. "I'm here." For a moment, neither of them moved. The storm howled. Then Thunderbolt stepped forward, so close Riley could feel his breath. She reached out, slow and steady, letting him decide. After a long minute, his nose brushed her hand, soft, electric, unexpected. Riley felt something shift inside her. She wasn't sure if it was hope or just the slow beginning of trust. By morning, the storm had passed. The world was bright, washed clean. Marianne found Riley in the barn, asleep on a pile of straw, Thunderbolt standing guard at her feet. "You're not like most city people," Marianne said, voice soft with something like respect. Riley smiled, stretching sore muscles. "I guess not." But as she looked at Thunderbolt, she realized she didn't want to be. Morning light spilled across the prairie, turning dew into diamonds. For Riley, every muscle ached, and her hands were stiff, but she couldn't remember the last time she'd woken up with this odd mix of anticipation and nerves. The barn was alive with sound. Hooves shifting on straw, soft snorts, the low hum of voices. She found herself moving with the others, swept up in the rhythm of feeding, mucking, and brushing. There was no time to think about the city, her failed marriage, or the empty condo waiting for her return. Thunderbolt watched her, always from the corner of his eye. He kept his distance, but he was no longer threatening, more like a sentinel, cautious and proud. Riley started to see him not as an adversary, but as the guardian of this odd little kingdom. At breakfast, Riley sat with the other volunteers around a battered table. "So, you're the one who made friends with Thunderbolt?" joked Cody, a wiry teenager who'd grown up on the reservation nearby. "Nobody's done that since he arrived." He grinned, passing her a mug of black coffee that tasted more like campfire than anything she'd ever bought at Starbucks. "I didn't really do anything," Riley admitted, glancing toward the barn. "Sometimes that's the point," said Marianne, taking a seat at the head of the table. "Horses like Thunderbolt, they notice who tries too hard, who wants something from them. You just listened. That's rare out here." A sudden crash from the far paddock broke the mood. Instantly, everyone was on their feet. Outside, they found a fence post knocked loose and a young filly named Willow limping, her flank marked with fresh cuts. Riley felt her pulse spike. Someone must have spooked the herd during the night storm, and Willow, the shyest, had gotten herself tangled in the wire. Cody moved quickly, but Willow shrank from his touch. "She's always afraid," he muttered. "She doesn't let anyone get close." Riley crouched, keeping her voice low. "Hey, sweetheart. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." She let Willow sniff her hand, staying perfectly still as the filly shivered with pain and fear. Marianne handed Riley a halter, eyes steady but approving. "You're good with her. Take it slow." It took nearly an hour, but finally, Willow let Riley slip the halter on. Riley stroked her mane, feeling the filly's trembling subside. The others led her to the barn, and Riley stayed by her side while Marianne cleaned the wound. "She's lucky," Marianne said quietly. "Could have been a lot worse." Afterward, Riley felt the other volunteers' eyes on her, a new respect in their glances. She was becoming part of this place, not just a visitor, but someone who mattered. But the day wasn't done, testing her. Late that afternoon, while she was hauling hay, Riley heard raised voices by the main gate. Two men in a battered pickup had pulled up, their faces shaded by baseball caps. They talked fast and loud, their tone impatient. "We're here for that bay gelding," one called out. "Said you'd hold him for us." Marianne's face tightened. "That's not how this works. You know the adoption process." The men glanced at Riley, then at the barn. "Come on, he's just a horse." "He's not just anything," Marianne replied, her voice like stone. You want to take an animal, you follow our rules. Background checks, home visits, no exceptions. One of the men spit on the ground. You people think you're saints, huh? These animals don't belong to you? We'll find another way. Marianne stood her ground until the truck rolled away in a spray of gravel. Riley's hands shook, adrenaline flooding her system. Do they come often? She asked quietly. People like that? Marianne shrugged, though Riley could see the tension in her jaw. Too often. Some just want cheap labor, or worse. Why do you do it? Riley pressed, not sure if she was talking about the sanctuary or the standoff. Marianne looked at her, eyes tired but fierce. Because they need someone who'll stay. That's all any of us need. That night, Riley walked the fences with Cody, flashlight beams skipping over the grass. You did good today, Cody said. Not everyone stands up to trouble. Riley smiled, feeling something loosen inside her. I've spent my whole life avoiding it. Maybe I'm finally learning. Cody grinned. Or maybe you're just stubborn. They reached Thunderbolt's paddock. The big horse stood at the far end, silhouetted against the moon. Cody watched Riley for a moment. You know, when he first came, he wouldn't let anyone near him. Didn't eat for days. Marianne thought we'd lose him. Riley leaned on the fence, gazing at the horse. What changed? Nobody knows. Maybe he just decided we weren't all bad. A sudden sound, a sharp yelp, then frantic barking broke the quiet. From the dark came a wild dog, drawn by the storm's scent and the lure of easy prey. Willow, startled, bolted across her pen, her injured leg folding beneath her. Riley's body reacted before her mind could catch up. She sprinted toward the pen, shouting, waving her arms. The dog turned, teeth bared. Thunderbolt charged the fence, his massive frame a blur in the night. The dog hesitated, then darted away as Cody hurled a rock, chasing it into the tall grass. Riley knelt beside Willow, her heart pounding. It's okay. You're safe now. I've got you. Cody arrived, breathing hard. You don't give up, do you? Riley shook her head. Neither do they. They spent an hour calming Willow, checking every horse in the sanctuary, walking the perimeter twice. When it was finally quiet, Riley leaned against the barn, looking up at the sky. The stars seemed closer here, raw and endless. Inside, Marianne was waiting with hot tea. You did good, she said simply, handing Riley the mug. Riley smiled, exhausted but content. I'm starting to get it, she admitted. It's not about fixing them. It's about showing up, about being the one who stays. Marianne nodded. That's all any of us need, human or horse. As Riley drifted off to sleep that night, her dreams were filled with running hooves, open fields, and the promise of another dawn. For the first time in years, she didn't feel lost. She felt found. 3 weeks. That's how long Riley had now spent at the sanctuary. It was long enough to pick up 100 small habits, the way Marianne liked the water buckets filled at dawn, how Cody always tapped the gate twice before entering the paddock, which horses would nudge for treats, and which ones still flinched at an outstretched hand, long enough that the scent of hay and leather had become comforting, almost familiar. But not long enough, it seemed, to break down all the walls, her own or Thunderbolt's. Most mornings began with fog and a low, golden light. Today, it brought a biting wind and news. An old rancher in the next county was surrendering 3 more horses. They were coming in by trailer, nervous and wild. The whole team snapped into action, prepping the quarantine stalls, setting out water, and checking fences. Riley caught Marianne's eye, the silent look that now passed between them, a mixture of worry and resolve. By mid-morning, the trailer rattled up the dirt drive. The driver, hat pulled low, unloaded the horses with practiced efficiency. There was a thin buckskin, trembling with nerves, a spotted mare with haunted eyes, and, last of all, a rangy gelding who reared and fought every inch of the lead rope. This one's a handful, the rancher warned. Doesn't trust a soul. Riley helped guide the new arrivals to the barn. She kept her voice low, copying Marianne's calm authority, though her own heart hammered. The newcomers kicked up a fuss, nostrils flaring at every unfamiliar sound. Thunderbolt, hearing the commotion, paced along his fence, tail lashing, ears pinned. Riley watched him, wondering if he saw himself in the frightened horses. Suspicious, alone, pulled out of the only world they'd ever known. The afternoon brought more challenges. The spotted mare refused water, her breath coming fast and shallow. Riley sat with her, softly humming, reading aloud from her phone, just to fill the silence with something gentle. "It's okay, girl. I know you're scared, but you're safe now. Nobody here is going to hurt you." She didn't know if horses understood words, but the mare's eyes grew less wild. Her shivering eased. When the mare finally took a few sips of water, Riley nearly cried with relief. But that sense of calm was short-lived. A sudden downpour swept over the sanctuary, turning the dirt paths into rivers of mud. The old barn roof leaked in 3 places. The wind shrieked through broken boards, making even the most settled horses restless. Riley, Cody, and Marianne raced to close windows and check the animals. Thunderbolt, usually so composed, circled his stall, head tossing. As Riley approached, Thunderbolt stamped, ears flat. He bared his teeth, threatening. Riley froze, heart pounding, instinct screaming at her to step back, but something in his eyes stopped her. It was fear, she realized, not rage. The storm was a monster, and Thunderbolt was cornered. "Easy," she whispered, her hands trembling. "I'm not here to hurt you. You're okay. I promise." For long minutes, Riley just stood there, matching his breathing, refusing to turn away. Finally, Thunderbolt lowered his head. His flanks heaved, but he let her enter the stall, keeping her distance, letting him decide. The trust was fragile, as thin as the line of light between the storm clouds. The power went out. Rain hammered the roof. Riley and Marianne gathered everyone in the old tack room. Cody, the volunteers, and when it was safe, the more anxious horses. With flashlights and old lanterns, they made a circle, waiting out the storm together. The room filled with quiet voices and the sound of rain, the air thick with the smell of wet fur and leather. It was during that storm that the volunteers shared stories about horses saved, horses lost, the ones who never learned to trust, and the miracles that sometimes happened when you least expected them. Riley listened, drawn in, feeling the sanctuary's history settle on her shoulders like a quilt, patched, worn, but warm. When the rain eased, Marianne checked on the new arrivals. Riley followed, her boots squelching in the mud. In the barn, the buckskin and the spotted mare had calmed, but the rangy gelding still refused contact, eyes wild. Marianne sighed. "He may never settle. Some don't." Her voice was gentle, but resigned, the kind of acceptance that came from years of heartbreak. Riley refused to accept that. At least, not yet. That night, after dinner, she snuck out to the barn with an apple in her pocket. She sat outside the gelding's stall, her back to the wall, reading softly again. Poetry this time, her mother's favorite. Something about wild things and homecomings. She stayed there until the moon was high, the apple untouched at her feet, her own breath fogging in the cool air. She left the fruit by the stall door and whispered, "Good night, big guy. No rush. I'll be here tomorrow." A soft sound behind her made Riley turn. Thunderbolt stood at the fence, watching her. Not close, but not hostile. He snorted, then dipped his head, as if in approval. Riley smiled, warmth spreading through her chest despite the chill. "You get it, don't you?" she murmured. "It's not easy, letting people in. Sometimes it's easier to stay wild." Thunderbolt turned and walked into the darkness, his figure blending into the prairie. But Riley felt the connection. Tenuous, precious, real. That night, as she lay in bed, listening to the receding thunder, Riley realized she was changing. She was still afraid, still unsure, but a seed of courage had been planted. Maybe healing, for horses and people alike, was just a matter of staying long enough, of refusing to give up, even when the storms came. Morning brought blue skies and muddy boots. Riley returned to the barn, determined to keep trying. With the new arrivals, with Thunderbolt, with herself. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in years, she was ready to find out. By the time the sun was high, the sanctuary was buzzing with nervous anticipation. Word had spread. The sanctuary's annual open house was happening this weekend, a rare event where the public could tour the facilities, learn about horse rescue, and maybe fall in love with a new companion. For Mary Ann, it was a lifeline. Funds from donations and possible adoptions kept the sanctuary afloat for another year. For Riley, it was an unexpected test, one that made her stomach clench every time she remembered how little she knew. Preparation was chaos. Trucks arrived carrying hay and supplies, banners were strung between old fence posts, volunteers cleaned the barns until the air was thick with dust. Riley found herself at the heart of it, holding checklists, hauling water, and coaxing nervous horses into looking presentable. "It's like the Oscars for horses," Cody joked, flicking a brush across Willow's back. "Only with more manure." Riley managed a weak laugh. "I hope I don't mess it up." "You won't," Cody said, his confidence so casual it felt contagious. "You care. That's enough." Still, anxiety gnawed at Riley. Her city life had been a private affair. Here, she'd have to answer questions, talk about horses she barely understood, maybe face old doubts. She watched Thunderbolt graze by the far fence, alone, as always, and wondered if he felt the same unease, if he would rather slip away than let strangers get too close. The big day dawned with clear skies. Guests arrived in a steady stream, families with curious children, retirees in hiking boots, a few wealthy locals whose names Mary Ann whispered with hope. The horses, sensing the shift, pranced and whickered, some eager, others shy. Riley was stationed by the quarantine paddock, charged with explaining the new arrivals' stories. She wore her best jeans, her hair tied back, and practiced her answers as people approached. The first question came from a small girl clutching her mother's hand. "Why do horses look so sad sometimes?" Riley crouched, meeting the girl's eyes. "Sometimes they've been through a lot, just like people. It takes time for them to trust again. But they're not sad forever. They just need someone who believes in them." The mother smiled, squeezing her daughter's shoulder. Riley's nerves eased, replaced by a steady sense of purpose. Across the yard, Mary Ann led groups past Thunderbolt's paddock, her voice clear and proud. "That's Thunderbolt. When he first arrived, no one could get near him. He's a survivor. Not every horse wants to be tamed, and that's okay. We give them the space to heal at their own pace." Thunderbolt stood tall, regal, even in his scars. Some visitors tried to coax him closer with apples or soft words, but he kept his distance. Riley felt a pang of understanding. How easy it was to judge, how hard to wait. Suddenly, a commotion erupted near the barn. One of the children, a boy chasing after his younger brother, had slipped into Willow's pen. Willow, still skittish from her injury, reared up in fright. The boy froze, eyes wide. In a flash, Riley sprinted across the yard, leaping the gate. "Easy, Willow. It's okay," she murmured, arms spread to shield the boy. The filly's nostrils flared, but Riley's presence steadied her. "I'm here, girl. You're safe." She took slow steps, talking all the while, and guided Willow aside just enough for Cody to grab the boy and pull him to safety. The crowd gasped, then applauded. Riley felt her legs shake as adrenaline faded. Mary Ann's eyes met hers across the paddock, filled with something between gratitude and pride. "Nice work, city girl," Cody whispered. After the scare, Mary Ann asked Riley to join her at the adoption tent. "You earned it," Mary Ann said, voice low. "People listen to you. Maybe they'll see the horses the way you do." It wasn't easy. Some visitors asked blunt questions. "Why are some horses so scared?" "Can't you just make them obey?" Riley answered honestly, drawing on her own journey. "You can't force trust. Not with people, not with animals. All you can do is show up, again and again, until they know you mean it." One older man, weathered and skeptical, pointed at Thunderbolt. "What's the point of keeping a horse that'll never let you ride? What good is he?" Riley met his gaze, her own voice steady. "He's proof that not everything valuable is useful. He survived things we can't imagine. He teaches us patience. He reminds us that healing doesn't always look the way we expect. The man grunted, but didn't argue. As the sun dipped lower, a sudden gust scattered brochures across the yard. Children laughed, chasing the papers, while volunteers scrambled to collect them. Riley laughed too, surprised by her own sense of ease. At dusk, the event ended with a small ceremony. Marianne thanked the visitors, the donors, and her volunteers. She invited Riley to speak, a request that made her palms sweat, but she nodded. Riley stood before the crowd, searching for words. I came here to escape. I thought I'd just pass through. But these horses, they changed me. They taught me that courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about showing up anyway. It's about believing, even when it's hard. Thunderbolt watched from the shadows. Riley smiled, feeling their silent understanding. That night, after the last guest had left and the sanctuary was quiet again, Riley wandered out to Thunderbolt's paddock. She stood at the fence, the moon silvering the fields. Thank you, she whispered, for letting me stay, for teaching me how. Thunderbolt approached, slow and deliberate, until only the old wooden rails separated them. For the first time, he leaned his head over, breath warm on Riley's hands. She stood still, letting the moment stretch. No need to rush. No need for words. In the stillness, Riley realized something profound. Trust wasn't a gift. It was a choice. One you made again and again for as long as it took. And here, beneath the prairie sky, she chose to stay. The open house was over, but its echoes lingered for days at the sanctuary. Riley felt a new sense of belonging as she moved through her chores, hearing visitors' laughter in memory and catching herself smiling at odd moments. The event had brought in enough donations to pay the bills for a few more months, and 3 horses had new homes lined up. Yet, beneath the relief, a strange tension hovered, something Riley couldn't quite name, like a storm on the horizon. The feeling grew when Marianne pulled her aside late one afternoon. There's someone I want you to meet, Marianne said, voice low. It's complicated. Riley followed her to the main office, where a man waited, a man whose presence changed the air the way a wild animal does when it enters a room. He was tall, graying at the temples, and wore a suit that looked out of place against the barn's rustic walls. His handshake was firm, his eyes sharp and assessing. Riley McKenna? I'm Alan Pierce. I represent the legal interests of the Landon family. You may have heard of them. Riley nodded, the name sparking a distant memory. Old money, old power, ranches that stretched for miles. What brings you here, Mr. Pierce? He didn't waste time. My clients own the land bordering the sanctuary. They're concerned about some of the horses that have gotten loose recently. Especially Thunderbolt. Riley felt her jaw tighten. Thunderbolt's never left the sanctuary. Pierce smiled thinly. Maybe not yet, but my clients have invested a lot in breeding and training. A wild horse like him, well, accidents happen. They're prepared to take legal action if there's any more trouble. Marianne's face was unreadable, but Riley saw her grip on the desk tighten. Our horses stay on our property. If your clients have a problem, tell them to fix their fences. Pierce's tone softened, almost friendly. No one wants a fight. The Landons might be open to acquiring certain animals. Thunderbolt, for example. He's got impressive bloodlines. They'd pay well. Riley felt a cold anger bloom in her chest. He's not for sale. None of them are. Pierce shrugged. Think about it. I'll be in town for a few days. He left as quietly as he'd come, his shadow stretching long in the late sunlight. When the door closed, Marianne sighed, her shoulders slumping. They've been after Thunderbolt since he arrived. The Landons collect rare horses. They don't care about anything else. Why Thunderbolt? Riley asked, still shaking. His dam was a famous racer. The Landons claim he was stolen from them years ago. There's no proof, but they want him, and they don't give up. Riley stared out the window, her heart racing. He's not going anywhere. I'll watch him myself. Every night if I have to. Marianne nodded, a weary smile on her lips. You're one of us now, Riley. That counts for more than you think. The next days passed in a haze of watchfulness. Riley checked the fences twice a day. She memorized the sound of Thunderbolt's hooves, the rhythm of his breath at night. But sleep came fitfully, her mind running over every possibility. What if someone tried to steal him? What if the Landons forced a court order? What if the past couldn't be escaped? One night, as Riley was making her rounds, she saw headlights flashing near the far edge of the sanctuary. Her heart pounded as she ducked behind the feed shed, watching two figures climb the fence. They moved with the caution of people who expected to get caught, but not by Riley. She crept closer, breath shallow. The intruders headed straight for Thunderbolt's paddock, flashlights cutting white arcs through the darkness. Thunderbolt snorted, restless, backing away from their approach. Riley gripped her phone, ready to call Marianne or the sheriff, but something held her back. If she called too soon, the men might panic, spook Thunderbolt, or even hurt him. Instead, she picked up a heavy bucket and banged it against the metal gate. The sound echoed across the fields, sharp and jarring. "Hey!" she yelled, voice fierce. "Get away from him! I've already called the cops!" The intruders froze. For a split second, Riley thought they might rush her. But then, with a hissed curse, they scrambled back over the fence and into the darkness. Thunderbolt paced the fence line, blowing hard as Riley ran to him, heart pounding. She checked him over, soothing him with whispered promises. "You're okay. I'm here. I won't let them take you." Her hands shook, but she stayed with him until his breathing slowed, his body settling. Marianne arrived a few minutes later, out of breath, flashlight in hand. Riley explained what happened, anger and fear coloring her words. "It was them, the Landons, or people working for them." Marianne nodded grimly. "They won't stop, not until they get what they want, but we won't stop either." That night, Riley barely slept, her mind haunted by images of what could have happened. But in the morning, she found Thunderbolt waiting for her at the gate, as if nothing had changed. He nudged her hand, eyes steady, unafraid. "You're stronger than all of them," Riley whispered. "And so am I. We don't run, we stand together." News of the attempted theft spread quickly. The volunteers rallied, reinforcing the fences, taking turns on night watch. Cody set up cameras. Marianne filed a report with the sheriff. The sanctuary became a fortress, not just for Thunderbolt, but for all the wounded, wary souls who called it home. For Riley, something fundamental shifted. She realized that caring wasn't enough. She had to fight for the ones who couldn't fight for themselves. Her own scars, once a source of shame, now felt like badges of survival. As the days passed, she watched Thunderbolt run the length of his paddock, mane streaming in the wind, utterly untamed. She felt the same wildness in herself, a spirit that refused to be owned or broken. Whatever the future held, Riley knew she would face it head on. No more hiding, no more fear. And as dusk settled over the prairie, she whispered a vow to Thunderbolt and to herself. "No one's taking you. Not now, not ever. You belong here, so do I." The tension of the attempted theft refused to dissolve. It clung to the sanctuary like morning mist. Every creak of a branch, every distant engine kept everyone on edge. Riley barely slept, haunted by flashes of headlights and the memory of strangers' hands reaching for Thunderbolt. Even in daylight, when the sky was impossibly wide and blue, she caught herself glancing over her shoulder, listening for footsteps that weren't there. But the sanctuary adapted, as it always had. The volunteers became sentinels. Cody and another ranch kid named Jenna strung up new wire and solar lights. Marianne reinforced the barn doors and trained the searchlights to sweep the darkest corners. Even the horses seemed aware that the world had closed in a little, their eyes following every movement, their bodies tense at every unusual sound. Despite it all, Riley's connection with Thunderbolt deepened. She'd wake before sunrise, her mind heavy with worry, and walk to his paddock. Each morning, Thunderbolt would be waiting by the fence, head high, nostrils twitching. Sometimes he let her stroke his neck. Sometimes he simply stood with her, silent as the dawn. These moments, frail but honest, became Riley's anchor. One evening, as Riley mucked out the barn, she overheard a heated conversation between Mary Ann and a sheriff's deputy. "We've posted warnings at the county line," the deputy said, "but if those folks want that horse, they'll find another way." Mary Ann's voice was low, tight. "Then maybe it's time we move him. Hide him somewhere safe for a while." Riley's heart lurched. She stepped out, straw clinging to her jeans. "No. If we run, we're giving them what they want. We're saying Thunderbolt isn't safe here. I can stay with him. I won't let anything happen." Mary Ann studied her for a long moment. "It's not your fight, Riley. You could go home tomorrow. Forget any of this happened." Riley shook her head. "I can't. Not anymore. He's my family now." That night, the air felt thick with electricity, a prairie storm brewing on the far horizon. Riley settled into the old tack room, sleeping bag unrolled, lantern glowing weakly. She'd insisted on staying close, a silent guardian in case anyone came again. The hours crawled by. She dozed in and out, half awake, each creak of the wind setting her nerves on edge. Around midnight, the storm finally broke. Lightning ripped across the sky, thunder rattling the rafters. Rain hammered the roof, turning the dirt to rivers of mud. In the chaos, Riley heard the horse's fear. Hooves pounding, panicked whinnies slicing through the dark. She grabbed her raincoat and flashlight, stumbling outside. The scene was wild. Willow and the other new arrivals huddled together, eyes white with terror. Thunderbolt was circling his pen, frantic, testing the gate. A sudden flash of movement caught Riley's eye. Someone in a dark jacket, crouched by the fence. Her breath caught. "Hey!" she yelled, running toward them. The figure bolted. Riley gave chase, boots slipping in the mud, adrenaline overriding fear. She shouted again, waving her flashlight. Thunderbolt reared, slamming his hooves into the gate, as if to join the fight. The intruder scaled the fence, vanishing into the storm. Riley skidded to a halt, chest heaving. Cody and Jenna caught up, eyes wide. "You okay?" Cody called, rain streaming from his cap. "Yeah, they didn't get inside." Riley's voice shook, but she steadied herself. "They'll keep trying. We have to stay ready." They double-checked every lock, every gate. The rain finally eased, the thunder rolling away. Riley walked Thunderbolt's paddock, whispering comfort, her hands shaking less with each circuit. He pressed his head to her chest, breath hot and wild. For a moment, all her fear dissolved. There was just this bond, this promise to protect. The next morning, the sanctuary looked battered but unbroken. Fallen branches littered the road, and the fields were a patchwork of puddles, but every horse was safe. Mary Ann called a meeting at breakfast. The volunteers crowded around the table. "They came again last night," Mary Ann said quietly. "We can't count on the law to protect us. We protect each other. But we can't keep living like this. If any of you want to leave, I'll understand." Nobody moved. Jenna spoke up first. "We're not going anywhere. This is our home." Cody nodded. "They're not getting Thunderbolt. Not while I'm breathing." Riley felt a fierce pride in this odd little family. "We'll watch every hour, if we have to." Mary Ann's eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "Then we stand together, no matter what." The next few days blurred into a dance of vigilance. Shifts were organized, and every volunteer took a turn walking the grounds after sunset. Riley spent long hours by Thunderbolt's side, learning every twitch and flicker of his mood. She read to him, sang old songs, sometimes just sat in silence, her presence a lifeline in the tension, and all the while, the Landons loomed. A phone call here, a new warning there. Alan Pierce reappeared, calm and courteous as ever. "You're being stubborn, Miss McKenna," he told her one morning by the paddock. "A horse like that, he'll never truly be yours." Riley met his gaze, unblinking. "He doesn't have to be. He just has to be free." Pierce smiled, not unkindly. "Freedom isn't always safe. It's the only thing worth fighting for." Pierce tipped his hat. "Good luck. You're going to need it." As the sun set, Painting the fields orange and gold, Riley watched Thunderbolt run. His muscles rippled, his mane a banner in the wind. He stopped at the fence, breathless, looking at her as if to say, "This is what I was born for." Riley nodded, a lump in her throat. "Me too, Thunderbolt. I finally get it. I finally know what I'm willing to fight for." The prairie was quiet, but it was the quiet of a long night before the dawn, the kind that forges bonds and tests courage. Riley settled in, knowing she might face another storm, another threat. But she wasn't afraid. She had found something worth protecting. And she wasn't leaving. Not now, not ever. The days grew shorter, but the air at the sanctuary was heavy, electrified with expectation. Every volunteer, every horse seemed more alert than usual. It was as if everyone could sense a coming confrontation, a final test hovering on the horizon. Riley felt it in her bones, a persistent thrum of nerves and defiance that colored every morning, every dusk. Marianne continued to run the sanctuary with her usual grit, but Riley could see the lines of fatigue etched deeper in her friend's face. Donations were enough to scrape by for now, but the threat from the Landons was growing more sophisticated. The phone rang at odd hours. Strangers parked on the road just outside the property. At night, Riley sometimes caught the flicker of headlights along the distant ridge, and always Thunderbolt's silhouette would appear between her and the darkness, silent and unyielding. One late afternoon, a local reporter arrived. She'd heard rumors, whispers about a powerful ranching family harassing a struggling sanctuary, about a wild horse who'd become a symbol. She introduced herself as Taylor Flynn, her camera slung over one shoulder, notepad in hand. "I'd love to tell your story," she said, glancing at Riley and Marianne. "People need to know what's happening here." Riley hesitated, but Marianne nodded. "If people know the truth, maybe someone will help." Taylor spent hours filming and interviewing. She asked Riley to walk her through Thunderbolt's story. Riley found herself in front of the camera, hands fidgeting, searching for words. "He's not just a horse," she said finally. "He's proof that survival is possible, that trust can be earned, not taken. The sanctuary is the only place he's ever been safe." As she spoke, she noticed Thunderbolt grazing just behind her, his presence strangely comforting. Cody and Jenna showed Taylor the new security measures, cameras, motion lights, reinforced locks. "It's not just about Thunderbolt," Jenna said. "All these horses have stories. All of us do." The next day, Taylor's segment aired on the local news and quickly spread online. Donations spiked. Strangers sent messages of support. Even the sheriff paid another visit, promising increased patrols. But with the new attention came greater risk. Riley's phone buzzed with threatening texts from blocked numbers. A single bullet hole appeared in the mailbox at the end of the drive, sending a cold chill through everyone at the sanctuary. One evening, Marianne called a meeting in the barn. Everyone gathered, the air thick with the scent of hay and anticipation. "We have to be ready for anything," Marianne said. "They won't stop until they get what they want. But I won't let them take Thunderbolt. I won't let them break this place." Cody grinned, tossing his ball cap on a hook. "Let 'em come. They'll find out we don't scare easy." Riley felt a surge of pride for this makeshift family. "We're stronger together," she said, "and if they want Thunderbolt, they'll have to go through me." The storm finally broke on a night when the wind howled and the moon hid behind thick clouds. Riley had the late watch, bundled in her coat, boots sinking into wet earth as she patrolled the paddocks. At first, the rain was only a whisper, but soon it was drumming on the barn roof, masking every other sound. Thunderbolt was restless, pacing his pen. Riley whispered to him, trying to calm them both. "It's okay. I'm here. I promise." A sudden flash of light at the far end of the field caught her attention. Then movement, shadowy figures scaling the fence. Riley's heart hammered. She fumbled for her phone, calling Marianne with shaking hands. "They're here. I see at least 3, maybe more." "I'm on my way," Marianne said. "Stay with Thunderbolt. Don't let them get him." The next minutes blurred. Shouts in the darkness, the glint of flashlights, the thud of boots in mud. Cody and Jenna arrived, swinging heavy flashlights, yelling to drive the intruders back, but these men were determined, moving with military precision. One darted toward Thunderbolt's pen, bolt cutters flashing. Riley ran at him, adrenaline giving her speed. "Get away from him!" she screamed, grabbing the nearest thing, a shovel, and brandishing it like a weapon. The man turned, startled by her fury, and for a split second their eyes met. He looked away first, cursing, and shoved her aside. Thunderbolt reared, his massive frame eclipsing the intruder. For an instant, man and horse faced each other in a contest of wills. The man hesitated, fear breaking through his bravado. Thunderbolt lunged, hooves striking the gate. The clang echoed across the field, followed by a chorus of whinnies from the other horses. The commotion drew Marianne, Cody, and Jenna to Riley's side. The intruders, realizing they were outnumbered, scrambled back over the fence, fading into the storm and darkness. Marianne dialed the sheriff, breathless. They tried. They failed. Riley clung to Thunderbolt, her own heart racing. "You did it, boy. You scared them off." They didn't sleep that night. The volunteers huddled in the barn, passing out coffee, checking on each horse, nerves raw but spirits unbroken. When dawn finally came, the sanctuary looked battered but intact. Thunderbolt's paddock was muddy, the gate dented but holding strong. Riley stroked his neck, grateful tears stinging her eyes. "They'll come again," Marianne warned. "They always do. But now the whole town knows. Now everyone's watching." Riley nodded, feeling a quiet resolve settle in her chest. Let them watch. Let them see that we don't back down. The day passed in a haze of exhaustion and relief. Local supporters arrived to help mend the fence, bringing fresh hay and baked goods. The sheriff installed new security lights, and Taylor's news crew returned, capturing footage of the battered gate and the community standing shoulder to shoulder with the sanctuary. Thunderbolt grazed calmly, as if nothing had happened, but Riley could see the change in him. He watched her more closely now, sometimes following her along the fence, accepting treats from her hand with less hesitation. That evening, as the sun broke through the clouds and painted the fields with light, Riley sat beside Thunderbolt's paddock, breathing in the peace she'd fought so hard for. The battle wasn't over, but she felt stronger, surrounded by the people and animals she'd grown to love. She ran her fingers through Thunderbolt's mane, whispering, "We're not just survivors. We're fighters, and we're not alone anymore." The wind carried her words across the prairie, and for the first time in weeks, Riley felt hope. Stubborn, bright, and absolutely unbreakable. The failed raid on the sanctuary changed something fundamental, not just in Riley, but in everyone who called this patch of prairie home. Where there had been fear, now there was fierce determination. Each person moved with a sense of unity, fortified by the knowledge that they weren't alone. For the first time, Riley felt the invisible threads that tied them together. Volunteers, horses, even the neighbors who stopped by with pies and fence posts, ready to pitch in without being asked. But the calm that followed was uneasy, edged with worry. Marianne met with the sheriff twice in 1 week, and Riley noticed her friend checking her phone more often, tension drawn tight across her shoulders. The local newspaper printed an editorial in support of the sanctuary, quoting Riley's words about Thunderbolt and the meaning of survival. Donations surged, and well-wishers flooded their inbox, but so did threats and ugly rumors. The Landons' name appeared in hushed conversations at the hardware store and the diner. People speculated about the value of a single horse, why a powerful family would go to such lengths, and what it would take to make them stop. Riley's own life changed too. She found herself at the center of the sanctuary's defenses, organizing shifts, setting up extra cameras, learning to read license plates from a distance. At night, she barely slept, pacing the barn with a mug of coffee, her phone clutched in one hand. Sometimes, when the anxiety clawed too sharp, she'd sit by Thunderbolt's paddock and talk to him, her voice low and soothing. "You're safe," she promised him again and again. "As long as I'm here, no one's taking you. Not them. Not anyone." Thunderbolt had changed, too. He no longer paced the edges of his pen or flinched at every sudden sound. He watched Riley with steady, knowing eyes, accepting her touch, letting her brush the tangles from his mane and pick the mud from his hooves. He would rest his head on her shoulder sometimes, heavy and warm, his trust a silent vow that made Riley's heart ache with gratitude. One crisp morning, Riley woke to the sound of Willow whinnying frantically. The filly, still timid from her injury, had spooked at a hawk circling overhead and tried to vault the fence. Riley rushed to her, heart pounding, only to find Cody already there, speaking softly, coaxing Willow away from the rails. "She's getting braver," Cody said, grinning. "Like someone else I know." Riley flushed, swatting his arm playfully. "We're all learning, I guess." He sobered, glancing around the field. "Are you scared, Riley, that they'll try again?" She hesitated. "Every day. But I'm more scared of what would happen if we gave up, if we let them win." She watched Thunderbolt grazing nearby, strong and unbroken. "He's taught me more about courage than anyone." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a battered pickup at the front gate. Riley's stomach dropped as she recognized Alan Pierce, the Landon's attorney. He stepped out, as polished as ever, holding a thick envelope. "I'd like to speak with you and Marianne," he said, his tone neutral. They met in the barn office, the familiar space suddenly feeling claustrophobic. Pierce set the envelope on the desk and slid it across to Marianne. "This is a final offer. The Landons are prepared to pay double the market price for Thunderbolt. They'll waive all claims to any other horses. All they want is him." Marianne didn't touch the envelope. "He's not for sale." Pierce sighed, looking older than before. "You understand. If you refuse, they'll sue. They have resources, more than you. This place could be tied up in court for years." Riley leaned forward, her voice quiet but unyielding. "We won't let you take him. Not for any amount of money." Pierce regarded her with a kind of reluctant respect. "You're making this harder than it has to be." Marianne's gaze was steely. "This horse survived everything your clients threw at him. He belongs here, with us." Pierce stood, gathering his papers. "Then I wish you luck. You'll need it." As soon as he left, Marianne's composure cracked. She slumped in her chair, rubbing her eyes. "This could ruin us, Riley. Even if we win, the legal fees alone—" Riley squeezed her hand. "We're not alone. You saw the news, the support. People care. We just have to hold on." The days that followed blurred into a tense routine, feeding, mucking, fixing fences, watching for strange cars, fielding calls from journalists and lawyers. But there were moments of joy, too. A shy rescue mare allowed a child to pet her for the first time. Cody taught Riley how to ride bareback, laughing as she wobbled and nearly slid off. At night, the volunteers gathered around a bonfire, sharing stories, singing old country songs into the darkness. In those hours, the threat from outside faded, replaced by warmth and laughter. Then one evening, as Riley made her rounds, she found Thunderbolt standing at the far end of his paddock, staring across the open field. She followed his gaze and saw a movement in the shadows. Two men, their faces masked, moving silently toward the fence. Riley didn't hesitate. She sprinted across the field, shouting for help. The men scaled the fence, landing with heavy thuds on the sanctuary side. Thunderbolt backed away, nostrils flaring. The men advanced, ropes in hand. Riley grabbed a pitchfork, brandishing it like a sword. "Get away from him!" she screamed, her voice raw. The men hesitated, surprised by her ferocity, but kept coming. Cody and Jenna appeared, wielding flashlights and yelling, their shouts echoing across the fields. The intruders bolted, scrambling back over the fence, vanishing into the night. Thunderbolt galloped to Riley, circling her as if to protect her in turn. The volunteers gathered, breathless, shaken, but unharmed. Marianne called the sheriff, who promised more patrols. "You did good, Riley," Marianne said, voice trembling. "You kept your promise." As the adrenaline faded, Riley knelt beside Thunderbolt, stroking his neck. "You're safe, boy. I told you I'd fight for you. And I will. Every time." The moon rose over the sanctuary, bathing the fields in silver. The horses settled, their silhouettes peaceful against the prairie night. Riley sat in the grass, surrounded by her newfound family, and felt something unbreakable take root inside her, a fierce, defiant hope that no threat, no powerful enemy could ever destroy. For the first time, she believed it. They would win. Not because they were stronger, but because they would never stop fighting for each other. And that was what it meant to belong. The next morning dawned silent and gray, as if the whole prairie was holding its breath. Riley woke before sunrise, heart pounding, her dreams still tangled with shadows and running hooves. She pulled on her boots and hurried out, checking every gate and lock. Thunderbolt was waiting by the fence, watching her, his dark eyes calm but alert. It felt like they both knew something was coming, some final trial neither could avoid. At breakfast, the volunteers gathered around the kitchen table. Nobody touched their food. Jenna scrolled through her phone, reading aloud from a news site. The Landon family has filed for an emergency injunction to seize Thunderbolt, claiming stolen property and endangerment to the community. Cody cursed under his breath. Marianne just stared at her coffee, shoulders slumped. Riley clenched her fists, trying to keep the panic at bay. "We knew this was coming," she said quietly, "but we're ready. We have evidence, support, witness statements. We can fight this." Marianne managed a shaky smile. "You've changed us, Riley. All of us. I don't know how this ends, but I know we'll face it together." The hours ticked by, each one heavier than the last. Lawyers called, neighbors stopped by, with casseroles and quiet words of support, and Taylor from the news crew set up her camera by the main gate, determined to document whatever happened next. The local sheriff arrived, offering a reassuring presence, but everyone knew his authority was limited. If the court ruled for the Landons, nothing short of a miracle could save Thunderbolt. At noon, a black SUV appeared at the end of the drive. Alan Pierce stepped out, flanked by two deputies and a well-dressed woman Riley recognized from newspaper photos as Margaret Landon herself. She wore pearls and sunglasses, her expression cool and unyielding. Riley's stomach turned to stone. Marianne greeted them at the barn door, her chin high. "You'll need a court order," she said. Pierce produced a stack of papers. "We have one." Margaret Landon surveyed the sanctuary with a kind of bored distaste. "We're here for our property." "Hand him over quietly, and there won't be trouble." Riley moved to stand between Thunderbolt's paddock and the intruders, her hands trembling, but her voice strong. "He's not property. He's family. And you're not taking him without a fight." The deputies approached, hesitant but firm. The whole sanctuary team formed a human barricade in front of Thunderbolt's gate. Cody, Jenna, Marianne, even the youngest volunteers. Taylor's camera captured every moment, broadcasting it live to the town. Margaret Landon's lips curled in disdain. "You're wasting everyone's time. That horse belongs to us by law. Get out of the way." Marianne held up a hand. "No, we're not moving." The standoff stretched on, time slowing to a crawl. The deputies muttered into their radios, unsure how to proceed. The sheriff, watching from the sidelines, shook his head and quietly made a phone call. Meanwhile, neighbors gathered along the fence, their numbers swelling as word spread. Some carried signs, "Save Thunderbolt," "Sanctuary Matters," "Love over Law." Margaret Landon tried a new tactic, her voice softening. "Miss McKenna, think about what you're doing. You could ruin this place for everyone, just for one animal. Is it worth it?" Riley looked at Thunderbolt, his head high and proud behind her. She felt the weight of every day, every struggle, every silent promise. He survived everything because someone finally cared enough to stay. "I won't turn my back on him now." Suddenly, Taylor's phone buzzed. Her live broadcast was exploding online. People from all over were calling, posting, pledging money and support. The news anchor reported that the governor's office had received hundreds of messages demanding protection for the sanctuary. Pierce's calm slipped. "We have a court order." The sheriff stepped forward, holding his phone. "And I have the governor on the line. He's ordered a full investigation into the Landon's claims and a temporary injunction. No one's taking anything until it's sorted in court." Margaret Landon's composure cracked. "This isn't over." "No, it's not," Marianne said. but you're done here for today." The deputies backed down, collecting their papers. Margaret Landon glared at Riley, then turned and left, her entourage trailing after her. The SUV sped away, a cloud of dust in its wake. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Cody whooped, swinging his hat in the air. Jenna hugged Riley, tears streaming down both their faces. The volunteers erupted in cheers, and neighbors clapped and shouted from the fence line. Riley leaned against Thunderbolt's fence, breathless, her body trembling with relief and adrenaline. Marianne wrapped her in a fierce embrace. "You did it, Riley. You saved him. You saved us all." Thunderbolt nuzzled Riley's shoulder, warm and gentle, as if he understood everything that had happened. She stroked his mane, whispering, "We're not safe forever. But we're safe tonight." That evening, the sanctuary celebrated. Neighbors brought food, Taylor filmed interviews, and even the sheriff stayed for coffee and pie. Riley stood with Marianne, Cody, Jenna, and all the others around a bonfire, feeling the warmth of true belonging for the first time in her life. As the firelight flickered, Riley gazed out at the dark fields. She knew the fight wasn't over, but the sanctuary had become more than a place. It was a promise, a family, a beacon of hope for anyone who'd ever felt unwanted or alone. She squeezed Thunderbolt's halter, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breath. "We'll face whatever comes next. Together. I'm not leaving. Not now. Not ever." The stars shimmered above, and in their quiet light, Riley finally believed she was home. Dawn at the sanctuary was always quietest, just before the sun broke the horizon. On this morning, that silence felt sacred. Riley stood by the fence, fingers curled around the cold wood, breathing in the sharp scent of prairie grass and dew. Thunderbolt grazed nearby, the rhythm of his movements grounding her in the present. A new day was here, and for the first time in so long, it came without fear. The night before, the sanctuary had celebrated like never before. Neighbors brought homemade pies, casseroles, and even a guitar or two. Volunteers swapped stories, laughter echoing across the dark fields, relief making everyone giddy and exhausted at once. Taylor's news segment went viral. Messages of hope flooded in from all over the country. Donations, letters, even offers of legal help. The court battle with the Landons wasn't over, but the tide had shifted. The whole state, maybe the whole country, was watching now. As Riley walked the paddocks with Marianne, the old fear had been replaced by something deeper, a sense of belonging, a quiet joy that came from standing firm when it mattered most. "You did something incredible, Riley," Marianne said as they paused by Willow's pen. "You changed this place. You changed all of us." Riley smiled, shaking her head. "I didn't do it alone. None of us did." Marianne's eyes glistened. "That's the point, isn't it? Family isn't about blood. It's about who you stay for, who you fight for." They checked every horse, every lock and latch, pausing to stroke muzzles and whisper soft good mornings. Willow pranced at the fence, her limp almost gone, nickering until Cody brought her a carrot. Even the most anxious rescues seemed to sense the peace, heads lifted, ears forward, watching the sunrise with a hope Riley recognized in her own chest. After breakfast, Taylor asked Riley if she would share a few words for a follow-up segment. The camera's red light blinked, and for a moment Riley's nerves returned. Then she remembered Thunderbolt, standing calm behind her, and she spoke from the heart. "I used to think survival was about running away, escaping before anyone could hurt me, but this place, these horses, they taught me something different. Real courage is about staying, about believing that trust is possible, even when the world has taught you to doubt it. Thunderbolt survived because people refused to give up on him. I survived because I finally learned how to stay." Taylor nodded, her own eyes bright. "What would you say to others facing their own storms?" Riley looked at the camera, voice steady. "When the storm comes, don't run. Find someone, some place you want to keep warm. That's your family. Don't let go." The rest of the day unfolded in small, ordinary miracles. The sanctuary received a visit from a state senator who promised to sponsor a bill protecting animal rescues from harassment by powerful interests. The sheriff stopped by with coffee and a smile, promising to keep an extra eye on the property. Cody and Jenna found a litter of barn kittens and named them after the horses. Even Alan Pierce called, his tone grudgingly respectful, to say the Landons were reconsidering their legal options. For now, at least, Thunderbolt was safe. But the real change was inside Riley. She walked the grounds with a new confidence, shoulders squared, laughter never far from her lips. She felt the difference in the way people looked at her, in the way she looked at herself. No longer a visitor, no longer running. She was a part of the sanctuary, as rooted and vital as the old oaks that sheltered the barn. As evening settled, Marianne called everyone together. The bonfire was lit once more, flames dancing high as the prairie wind sang in the grass. The volunteers, neighbors, and even some strangers who'd driven miles to meet Thunderbolt gathered in a rough circle. Marianne raised her mug. To those who stay, to those who fight, to every soul who's ever been unwanted and found their place at last. Cheers rang out, voices strong and proud. Riley felt tears prick her eyes as she looked around. The faces lit by firelight, the horses quiet in their paddocks, the stars just beginning to burn above them. She thought of all the people and animals who had come through this place, battered but unbroken, in the family they'd built out of trust and shared struggle. Later, after the fire burned down and the crowd drifted away, Riley lingered by Thunderbolt's fence. He stepped forward, pressing his head against her shoulder, his breath warm in the cool night. "Thank you," Riley whispered, "for teaching me how to stay, for letting me belong." Thunderbolt's steady presence was answer enough. She leaned against the fence, gazing up at the endless prairie sky, a new peace settling deep inside her. She remembered something she'd once heard, maybe from Marianne, maybe from a book. The truest families aren't born. They're chosen in the cold. And for the first time, she understood. In a documentary voiceover, Riley's words echo over scenes of the sanctuary, horses running free, volunteers laughing, the sun rising over fields of gold. People think animals act only from instinct, but I wasn't their kin. I wasn't even useful. And still, they stayed. She pauses, her voice gentle. We make a mistake when we think love and loyalty are only human traits. That connection can exist without taming, without possession. Sometimes, the ones we save are the ones who end up saving us. In her closing TEDx talk, Riley stands before a packed hall, Thunderbolt's image on the screen behind her. It wasn't a rescue. It was a return, a reminder. That love doesn't ask who you are. It just asks whether you'll stay. She smiles, eyes shining. Compassion isn't ownership. Survival doesn't mean silence. The truest families aren't born. They're chosen in the cold. She ends with a question for the audience, her words hanging in the quiet. When the storm comes, who will you keep warm? The sanctuary's story spreads, inspiring others to stand up, to stay, to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. Riley's journey from brokenness to belonging becomes a beacon, a proof that no one is too lost to be found, that real family is not about blood or ownership, but about who you choose, and who chooses you in return. So when the next dawn comes, and the world seems uncertain, remember this. There is a place for you, too, if you are brave enough to stay. And that, Riley thinks as she walks through the morning light with Thunderbolt at her side, is the promise of every new day.